Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Contractor Truth, the podcast where we talk about what it's really like to build a contracting business. There are no gurus here. No, I'm not one of those guys. No fluff. No, I made $10 million in 6 weeks and now I'm going to sell you my secret because I haven't done that. Not yet, anyway. Ha ha ha. Just real conversations about building a real business. You're not even a contractor. Maybe you're just a small business person. Well, I got good news for you because a lot of the principles we talk about here will also apply to your business. We're going to talk about the wins, the losses, the mistakes, the lessons, and hopefully have a few chuckles and laughs along the way. So if you're driving between estimates, or you're sitting in your truck having lunch, or if you're on the job site just pretending to organize your tools because you're not ready to talk to the customer yet, welcome. You are in the right place. Today's episode is about three things that I think every contractor struggles with. And the first one, and I'm going to be putting more emphasis on this going forward in the future, and that is your mindset. I honestly believe that your mindset is one of the greatest competitive advantages that you'll ever have. Now, secondly, I'm going to talk to you about a big mistake that I once made in business. It only happened once that I can remember anyway, but once was enough, believe me. And I'm hoping that I can help you save yourself from a similar fate to mine in that situation. And finally, we're going to open up what I call, and we've been doing this all along, I really haven't had a name for it. I might call it the toolbox, where I'm going to actually share something that is actionable for you right now, today, something that you can work on and implement into your business and your life and your plan literally tomorrow that will help you. And just a few things today about time management, which is not something we've talked about. This is an area I struggle with, so I have no doubt that maybe you do too. Anyway, let's get started. Let's talk about this contractor mindset. I'm going to make a statement and then I'm going to back it up. I want to tell you today, I believe, and I believe this for a long time, and this applies not just in business but in life in general, that positivity is a competitive advantage to you, okay? A number of years ago, I was sitting in Tim Hortons. For those of you in Great Britain, perhaps Australia, and maybe the United States, especially if you're in the southern U.S., you may not know what Tim Hortons is, but it is a Canadian institution. Not really my favorite place, I have to say that. You can take my Canadian card if you feel you need to. But I was sitting at Tim Hortons having coffee with an old friend. He had actually been very successful in a family business, and we were talking about life. We have some relations by marriage. Well, as a matter of fact, my son is married to his daughter, so we are linked that way. We share grandchildren. And we were talking about whatever two middle-aged guys talk about over coffee. I don't even remember. And then, whatever it was, during the course of the conversation, fairly early on in the conversation, he looked at me and he says, "John, I feel like you're a real glass half full kind of a guy." And man, I've never forgotten him saying that, and I have appreciated that because I think that's one of the best compliments that I've ever received in my life. Because that is exactly the kind of person that I want to be. Now, before somebody says, "Well, that's easy for you to say," let me stop you right there, okay? I'm going to open up and tell you something personal here. I've lost money. I've known what it is to lose a business. I've known what it is to lose my business partner, who was my best friend, who passed away young. And our partnership was no more, and our friendship was no more, and I miss him dearly, okay? I've been through it. So, just so you know, I'm not sitting up on some pedestal with $20 million in the bank and nothing's ever gone wrong in my life, okay? I've trusted people I shouldn't have trusted. I've made bad decisions. I've had customers keep me awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've stared at the ceiling wondering how I was going to make payroll and solve tomorrow's problems. I've had employees quit at exactly the wrong time. I've had suppliers promise materials first thing tomorrow and didn't get them till the day after. So when I talk about optimism, I am not talking about theory. I'm talking about something that I know all about. Optimism is not pretending that your problems don't exist. Optimism is refusing to let those problems define your life. Here's something I've noticed over the years. There are some people who have a solution for every problem, and I think most of you in my audience fit in that category. And then there are people who have literally a problem for every solution, and you know who you are. You know who I'm talking about. You suggest a new marketing idea, that'll never work. You suggest raising prices, customers won't pay that. You suggest hiring another employee, too risky. You suggest trying a different software, I don't trust computers, I don't trust technology. You suggest taking a vacation and someone says, it must be nice. Honestly, some people could find something wrong with free money. Seriously. If you hand them $1 million, they'd complain about the taxes they have to pay on it. And sooner or later, they always say the same thing. I'm not pessimistic. I'm just a realist. Really? I don't buy it for a second, because if you were truly a realist, then all those gloomy predictions that you've made would actually have come true, but they haven't. Most of the disasters that they worry about never happen. Most of the things that keep them awake at night never materialize. That's not realism. That's pessimism wearing the suit of a realist. Here's another thought. Let's imagine the pessimist is right. He's not. She's not. The economy does get worse. The customer says no. The deal falls apart. Business slows down. Congratulations. You were miserable for 6 months leading up to it. Now let's imagine the optimist is wrong. He believed things would work out. He encouraged his employees. He kept a sense of humor. He enjoyed building his business. He looked for opportunities instead of obstacles. If he ends up being disappointed, at least he enjoyed the trip. So why would you not choose that? Why would you spend your life worrying about things that probably aren't going to happen anyway? You know, one of the things I've learned about customers is they don't just buy your product. They buy your attitude. They buy you. Now think about it. You walk into somebody's home for an estimate. You spend the first 20 minutes complaining about the economy, complaining about employees, complaining about suppliers, complaining about politics, complaining that nobody wants to work anymore, complaining that customers only care about price. Do you really think that customer is excited about hiring you? And you say, I don't do that. But if you're negative in your thinking, it oozes out of you. Believe me, you can't hide it. Okay? They're not going to be excited about hiring. They're going to feel that. They're going to sense that. People don't buy confidence from negative people. They buy confidence from positive, confident, upbeat, and optimistic people. They want somebody who says, we can do that. They want somebody who says, we'll figure it out. Here's what I'd recommend. Not somebody who acts like the whole world is falling apart, some Chicken Little, the sky is falling, okay? Listen, the same thing happens inside your company. If the owner complains all day, the crew starts complaining. If the owner blames everyone else, the crew blames everyone else. Negativity spreads. But here is the good news, because optimism spreads too. Hope spreads like a disease, a good one. Confidence spreads. Solutions spread. Your leadership in that will be contagious. Your crew is watching you, whether you realize it or not. And maybe I'm talking to someone and you're an employee. I'm tempted to tell a story. I'm going to tell you the story. I have a relative who started working out of college in the HVAC business. And his boss, the owner of the company, well, he's the former owner now, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I had lunch with him one day. He's a friend of mine. And I said, hey, how's my relative doing? And he proceeded to tell me what a positive influence this guy was. And just, there'd never been, in the 30 years they've been in business, they'd never hired a guy that brought not only positivity himself, but he elevated the entire back shop. The whole crew was more positive, more productive, more profitable because he was there. His influence spread. Now, let me tell you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. The rest of the story is this, that he now owns the company, And he has taken it to a 30, I'm guessing, I don't know the numbers, but I would guess somewhere in the range of a $30 million company, 250 plus employees, the largest market share in the entire region for HVAC, okay? Some of you that are listening, if I gave you the name of the company, you would know who they are, okay? Why? Because positivity is contagious. Your crew is watching, your fellow employees are watching, and I'll tell you something, if you work for a company, your boss is watching. So leaders, listen, if you panic, they panic. If you stay calm, they stay calm. If you focus on solutions, everyone else starts focusing on solutions too. And here's something I've noticed in today's world. Being positive actually makes you very, very, very different from the rest. Turn on the news. Everybody's angry. Scroll social media. Everybody's offended. Everybody's upset. Go to the coffee shop. Everybody's complaining. It's almost fashionable to be miserable, isn't it? So imagine being the contractor who shows up smiling, who enjoys serving people, who looks for solutions, who has a sense of humor, who encourages people instead of draining their energy. You stand out. Not because you're louder, not because you're cheaper, because you are refreshing. And people actually enjoy being around you. And believe it or not, that's a competitive advantage. I'll leave you with one challenge this week. Become the contractor who has a solution for every problem instead of a problem for every solution. I promise you, your customers will notice, your employees, your fellow employees, your boss, whatever your situation is, and your family will notice. And maybe, just maybe, you'll enjoy this crazy journey of owning or working in a contracting business a whole lot more than you currently do. All right, enough of that talk. Hopefully that has boosted your endorphins for the rest of this podcast episode. I want to move into my second segment, which I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my business as a contractor. Now, I'm pretty sure, well, at least a mistake of this magnitude only happened once. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on it, but the good news is it only happened once, but the bad news is that once was enough. It was bad. It was really bad. You know, one of the greatest temptations in business, especially for, and this is really true of general contractors, but I think it applies across the board, is that you believe you're capable of, because I just in the last segment talked about positivity, so I'm gonna put a guard on that. Is believing you're capable of doing absolutely everything. A customer asks, and this was me to the hilt, okay? Can you do this? And before your brain has even engaged, your mouth says, absolutely. And then your brain catches up like 5 seconds later, in my case, probably 5 minutes later, and says, whoa, John, like, we've never done one of those before. Like, too late. Like, I was committed, okay? So over the years, we built a reputation for doing certain kinds of work, okay? And we became very good at those, like second nature, right? Like it was hard to get challenged with that. We were good at it. We did the best work in town. Our reputation was phenomenal. And it wasn't because we were smarter than everyone else. We did it a lot, right? We didn't have some magical ability, but we'd done them thousands of times. We had experience. We had done it repetitively, and when you do that same thing over and over again, it creates a high level of competence and excellence. But one day, and I think it was during a period when the phone wasn't ringing, and that's the danger point, okay? A customer approached us with a project that was, well, I was going to say it was just outside of our wheelhouse, but in hindsight, it was kind of way outside of our wheelhouse. And long story short, it depended on us having the exact right staff for the moment, and it was hard to get that staff. It wasn't something that was completely foreign to us. They didn't ask us to build a new space shuttle, although had they asked, I'm sure our friend Lobo Leo would have quoted it, but I can't talk because we did quote this job, okay? Anyway, this project was just enough outside our expertise that deep down I knew we probably shouldn't be taking it on. And then that little voice started talking. You're a contractor. You'll figure it out. You know, it's that positivity thing. It's just another job. How different can it be? So I said yes. And it was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in business. And it wasn't because I didn't care. It wasn't because I didn't love the customers. I did, and I felt terrible with what happened next. Next thing I knew, there were inspectors and engineers and all kinds of things involved that I had no background or competence in dealing with. Neither did my partner. Neither did my staff, as it turned out, even though some of them told me they did. It wasn't that we weren't trying to do our absolute best. The mistake was I convinced myself that our enthusiasm and our can-do attitude could replace our actual level of confidence and experience. It can't. I know that now. Now, thankfully, we were able to extricate ourselves from that, and the project was finished. But I'll tell you, it wasn't without difficulty. It wasn't something that I'm proud of. My relationship with that customer, our relationship with that customer suffered greatly. Our reputation suffered greatly. My stress level, I think it took years off my life. And the worst thing was the customer, what they expected, they did not get. It didn't meet the standard that I expect from our company. And that bothers me to this day because I genuinely care. I hope you can tell by listening to me. And if you follow me at all and you follow my training, I care about doing excellent work. I don't want customers just to be satisfied. I want them to be thrilled that they hired us. I wanted them telling their neighbors, you got to call these guys. This project was anything but that. It felt like survival. And I mean, it was bad. Now, we kind of jumped into the category of lowball Leo. I mean, not to make light of it, but Leo, he's the guy who says, no problem. I watched 3 YouTube videos last night, or I've never done one before, but I'm a pretty quick learner. I felt like we were lowball Leo. Not that our price was low even, but we believed confidence was a substitute for competence, and it isn't. And I want to just caution you, okay? All of us have a little bit of lowball Leo living inside of us, okay? I know I did that day. What did I learn? Okay, 3 lessons I learned. Number 1, never step outside your core competence, okay? Because it protects your reputation. You can successfully complete 100 projects, beautiful work, happy customers, 5-star reviews, then you struggle through one project and somehow that's the one people remember, okay? It might not be fair, but that's the reality of it, okay? Your reputation takes years to build, sometimes decades, and when you step outside of your level of expertise and competence, that can slip away in a matter of days. Lesson number 2, and this might be the biggest one, when you deal within your core competency, it serves the customer best. That's the most important thing. The most professional thing you can say sometimes is, listen, I'm sorry, but I'm not the best person for this job, okay? I know we hate turning work away. We hate saying no. We want the work. We've got payroll to make. We've got trucks. We've got insurance. We've got bills. We convince ourselves that every opportunity is a good opportunity, but it is not. Sometimes the best service you can provide is introducing the customer to someone who's better equipped than you are. And I've done that many times since. In fact, in this business, I still do it. I get asked all the time about marketing. Listen, I ran a marketing company, but I'm not up to date on today's marketing techniques. So what do? I refer them off to somebody else that knows what they're doing because it's outside of my core competency. Okay? Here's what's interesting about it is that people really appreciate that honesty. Don't be surprised if they hire you for other stuff down the road or recommend you, okay? Nobody's ever looked at me and said, I can't believe you admitted that wasn't your specialty. Instead, they say, hey, thanks for being honest. Quite often, 6 months or a year later, guess who they call when they have a project that actually fits what you do? Yeah, you got it, you. Because again, trust is worth more than one job. It compounds. Lesson number 3, it protects your business. A project outside your expertise is almost never as profitable as you think, okay? And that's a big deal. It eats time, it eats weekends, evenings, it eats your confidence, it distracts your team from the work they're actually really good at. It creates stress. Again, remember those years it took off my life? The stress follows you home. It follows you to bed at night. It wakes up with you. Your spouse has to live with it too, and your kids have to live with it, and even your dog starts avoiding you maybe if they're sensitive enough. One bad fit project can cost you far more than whatever profit you thought you were making, okay? And here's something I've come to believe. Just because someone is willing to pay you doesn't mean you should take the job. That's a hard lesson, but it's an important one that you've got to learn. Now, figure out what you're exceptional at, not just good, not just decent, exceptional, then become absolutely obsessed with getting even better and become known for that. Own that niche. Become the contractor people immediately think of when they need that type of work done. Don't try and become the contractor who does absolutely everything. Because when you try to be everything to everybody, you usually end up being average at everything. You know that old saying, he's jack of all trades, master of none? Yeah. So the contractors that I admire the most, and I have quite a few of them on my client list, they're not the ones who say yes to every opportunity. They're the ones who know exactly who they are. They know their position in the market. They know what they do, and they know what they don't do. And they're disciplined enough to stick to it. And that's a hard lesson that I had to pay a lot of money to learn, okay? And thankfully, I only had to pay tuition once. And hopefully, after hearing my story, you won't have to pay that tuition price. Now, segment 3, I want to pivot here and talk about time management. It's probably my favorite part of the podcast because I like leaving you with something practical that you can implement in your life tomorrow morning or maybe even this afternoon. Not next year, not when business slows down, but like right away. So today I want to talk about something that's probably saved me thousands of hours over the years, and it's planning. And I'll just tell you this, I'm not really a natural planner. So I learned something from my late partner. I always thought he was organized. And then I worked with him, and I realized that he was organized, but he wasn't naturally an organized person. He told me one day, he said, the reason why I'm organized is because I'm disorganized. And you go, well, what do you mean by that? Which is exactly how I stuttered out my question. What he meant was this: because I know my weakness, I've implemented things into my life and structured my life such that I overcome that by discipline, okay? So if you're not a good planner, you can do this. You can learn this, okay? It's not an exciting word, okay? If you weren't 23 minutes into this episode already, maybe you'd be turning it off and never coming back, okay? Nobody gets excited and says, boy, I hope I get to organize my calendar today. Okay, let's be honest, they don't. Most contractors would rather frame a basement in August with no air conditioning than spend 30 minutes planning their week. But here's what I've learned. One of the biggest differences between successful contractors and struggling contractors has very little to do with talent, very little to do with intelligence, very little to do with skill, and almost nothing to do with good luck. It's all about planning. I've met contractors who work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. They're absolutely exhausted, and somehow they're still behind. Then I've met contractors who almost seem chill, like relaxed. They're coaching their kids' baseball team. They're taking weekends off. They're out boating, fishing. They're spending time with their family, and somehow they're building bigger businesses. That isn't because they're smarter. It's because they're intentional, and they're intentional about planning, and they have been for a long time. So years ago, I realized I couldn't keep waking up every morning just reacting to whatever happened, because contractors are natural-born firefighters. You know what I mean? The phone rings, you answer it. Employee calls, you answer it. Customer texts, you answer it. Okay. Supplier forgot something, you deal with it. Inspector changes the schedule, you deal with it. By lunch, you've solved 15 problems. You put out 15 fires, and somehow accomplished absolutely nothing you actually planned to do. Does that sound familiar? Like sometimes I joke that contractors rather don't need calendars. We just need helmets and fire extinguishers. Every day feels like you're putting out 15, 20 fires. The problem is that all you ever do is react. You're never ahead of it. You're never leading. You're just surviving. You're not thriving. So years ago, I started following a very simple routine. I don't have anything fancy. To this day, I don't have any expensive software. I don't have any color-coded spreadsheets. I don't have a productivity guru telling me to wake up at 3:47 every morning and meditate from an ice bath. Okay, I have simple habits. The first thing I do every morning, well, not the first, but one of the first things I do is review today's schedule. Okay, what meetings do I have today? Where am I going? What, well, in my case, what proposals do I need to get out today? What, and for you, like what jobs are underway? Who absolutely needs to hear from me today? I don't want surprises. You don't want surprises. Life gives us enough of those as it is, and they will still come. But the second thing I do is look at tomorrow and then the rest of the week, okay? Most contractors spend all day just thinking about today, and then tomorrow comes and they panic. But the better contractors are already preparing for tomorrow. Do we have the materials? Is the crew ready? Are they prepped? Have they been briefed? Have we confirmed with the customer? Are the permits in place? Is there anything else that could blow up tomorrow that I can prevent today if I get ahead of it? Because here's something I've learned. 15 minutes of planning today can save 3 hours of chaos tomorrow. The third thing I do is return yesterday's messages. Or at least make a plan that within the first couple hours of the day, I'm going to have all those messages returned. If somebody called, left a voicemail, sent an email, even texted me, I want them to hear back from me, okay? Even if the answer is, I don't know yet, but I'm working. Actually, I did that today. I didn't have an answer for somebody. I said, look, I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you, but I want you to know I did receive your message, and it is in progress. People don't expect perfection. They expect communication. And communication, as I've said, builds trust. Customers notice it. Suppliers notice it. Your referral partners notice it. And honestly, it's amazing how many businesses simply fail to return phone calls. Sometimes I think responsiveness has actually become a competitive advantage. Now, fourth, I identified the 3 most important things I absolutely have to accomplish today, okay? There are things I can put off to tomorrow, and maybe you wouldn't believe this if I told you, but I am a procrastinator, okay? I think all of us have a procrastinator inside of us. Mine happens to be right near the surface. But pick those 3 or 5 or whatever, but those essential things that have to get done today. They cannot be put off to tomorrow, okay? Don't make it 20, okay? Because if you make it 20, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And if I accomplish those 3, 4, or 5 things, the day is a success. Everything else is gravy. Now, let's zoom out for a bit. I've mentioned this before. I'm having a flashback. Sunday evening. You can do it Monday morning, but I like Sunday evening, okay? Sometime before the week really gets going, I spend about 30 to 60 minutes planning the entire week, okay? It's not a whole afternoon. 30 minutes is usually enough. Sometimes I go into a bit more detail. That's probably the highest paying 30 minutes of my week. And the first area I review is sales. How many Zoom calls are booked in my case? In your case, it's how many estimates, okay? Who needs a follow-up? Who needs a proposal sent to them? Who said we'd like to think about it? By the way, those people rarely wake up Tuesday morning and say, honey, I remember that contractor. Let's call them today. They need follow-up. I can't emphasize that enough. Sometimes people get busy. They forget. They intended to call. So professional follow-up, it isn't pressure. It's good customer service, okay? Second, production. What's happening on every active job? Are materials arriving? Are they lined up to arrive on time? Are the inspections booked? Is the crew waiting on someone else? Can I see any bottlenecks coming? Because if I can see a train coming on Monday, I usually don't have to stand on the tracks until Friday, get hit with it. Third, marketing. This is one almost every contractor neglects, okay? You have to plan your marketing. You get busy, so you stop marketing. Then 6 weeks later, the phone stops ringing, okay? That takes planning. Suddenly we're all wondering what happened. Nothing happened. We just stopped feeding the pipeline, all right? Marketing isn't something you do when business is slow. Marketing is what keeps business from becoming slow. Every single week I ask myself one question. What am I doing this week that will create work 30, 60, or 90 days from now? Because today's marketing becomes next month's revenue. Don't ever take your foot off the marketing gas pedal. Finally, personal time, okay? My wife and I have a habit, by the way, of every morning, 7 o'clock, we have coffee together. And part of that, not all the time and not the whole time, we talk about personal time, okay? We talk about date night. We talk about family get-togethers for the week. We talk about what our plans are for the weekend. We talk about, are we having, we like to have company from time to time during the week. We talk about that, okay? And this one took me years to learn. So if you don't schedule your family into your life, your health, your marriage, vacation, hobbies, church activities, just an evening where you actually sit on the back deck and do nothing, schedule that, okay? Your business will consume every available minute if you don't. And ask me how I know. So actually, don't ask me. I really don't want to talk about it because it sucks that much, okay? I've lived it. Businesses expand to fill every hour you will give them. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day realizing you built a successful business and neglected everything you were building it for in the first place, like your family. That's not success. That's a lack of balance. So schedule the important things. They deserve a place in your calendar. Otherwise, they'll always happen, the famous word, sometime. And someday has an amazing ability to never arrive. So this is your challenge for this week. Tomorrow morning, before you answer the first phone call, before you open your email, this might require you getting up, okay, a little earlier. Before you start reacting to everybody else's emergency, take 15 minutes. Review the schedule. Look ahead to tomorrow. Return yesterday's messages. Identify your 3 biggest priorities. Then go attack the day. I honestly believe you'll be amazed at how much more productive you become with that. Not because you're working harder, not because you're working longer, but because you're finally working on purpose. Anyway, that is the conclusion of the episode. I hope you take 3 things away from our conversation today. Choose optimism, guys. I mean it. I mean it. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. The world has enough people complaining. Be the contractor who brings confidence into the room. Secondly, know your lane. Stay in it. Don't become everything to everybody. And third, don't leave your week to chance, okay? Don't let the rapids carry you, okay? Steer your canoe. Paddle ahead of the water. A little planning goes a long way. Most of us don't need more hours in the day, and even if we did, you can't get more hours in the day. You've only got so much. So we just need to make much better use of the time, the hours rather we've already been given. Anyway, I want to say again what I always say. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd really appreciate it if you'd follow, subscribe, leave us your comments, give us your feedback. Share it with another contractor who could use a little encouragement, a little guidance, a little direction, and maybe a reminder that there's always someone out there more disorganized than they are. If you know a contractor who reminds you of Lowball Leo, I was going to say don't send them this episode. Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely. We need some of those people to be converted over to the bright side. And anyway, thanks for listening to Contractor Truth, and I will see you in the next episode.